Good evening. It's 5 o'clock. According to the clock on the wall, I will call this special meeting, Monday, August 12th, to order. The agenda reads as follows. Review of action taken by the Newfane Selectboard at the August 5, 2019 regular Selectboard meeting relative to highway work at Hunter Brook Road. Since that meeting, there have been phone calls, discussions, revelations, whatever you want to say, probably be appropriate. One result is that I understand, as I think I did before, but I certainly do now, that there are some strong opinions and feelings on the part of various select board members relative to this project. My main purpose, my main thought, hope, if you will, for this meeting this evening is to get the board members a chance to speak their piece, to say what they think about any aspect of the situation, and then we will go from there. With that in mind, I guess I would like to start off with Mike Fitzpatrick and let him say what he thinks about.
All right. Well, speaking as selectmen, for one thing, is on that bids, they were open, what, a month and a half, 2 months ago? And there was no follow-up on it. And I don't know what the reason is for it, because I've heard, and I don't think that's right. And there's a bunch of things. I mean, I would have thought you'd have done it with a full board. It's supposed to have been on the agenda to act on it. I mean, being an open thing, from what I was told, it was an open bid. That should have been on the agenda at every one of our meetings. It's just like the Williamsville road work and all that stuff. Until you resolve something, it's supposed to stay on the agendas. And it hasn't been on there. And it wasn't on the last meeting either. And I don't see whether there was much discussion about it. Did somebody recommend just going with a higher bidder, which is $10,000 over the budget that we had anyways, to even do the work? So I don't know how you could award a bid for somebody that would is $10,000 higher than what we even had in the budget for. I just thought it should have been brought up on a night when there should have been a whole board.
I don't know if it makes a difference, but it was in the road foreman's report,
Right,
number
that's
9, that it still needed to be awarded.
Yeah, it's in his report, but it wasn't on the agenda. And that's what somebody says has to be on the agenda, not just his report.
I'm wondering if it's a legal binding contract.
In what way? There is no contract.
Well, it's a contract to do business, to do services
There was the awarding of a bid.
of a bid, which is a contract.
No, I disagree, but that's all right. To a point, well, I'll let it go myself. Christopher?
I'd like to speak. I'm the one that made the motion. The reason for making the motion is it had nothing to do with who got it. That would, whoever's number was different. I did not think, because I've had my backside reamed from a lot of townspeople, because the job on the Dover Road has not been completed yet, and the town's being held $22,000, $122,000 from the state of Vermont, because it has not been signed off yet. And that's the reason I did it that way.
And why wouldn't that have been brought up at a meeting, Christopher?
Huh?
that should have been brought up and discussed at a meeting, not just because it's your opinion. And I said, just like that whole job up here, on that job up there, it says when we finished that job in December of that year, there was only one inspector running around checking them jobs, and that was Scott Jensen. And he was the one that had to look at it. Scott Jensen come by and approved what we had done on that project. And then, when it comes into the invoices and stuff, you're one of them, you signed to pay it. So I mean, you and Marion and...
Oh, I'm guilty, it's supposed to be that way, I'm not
So I mean,
denying
but the
that.
whole thing is, Chris Ferry, not one of you guys knew that Mark Pickering was supposed to look at it until they sent the invoice in to get the payment. Because Mark told me that the other day. They had no clue that it all went through until he refused to pay the payment because he was supposed to be the one that did the inspection. But when I finished that job, what I'm goddamn sick of is everybody saying that I went and did a job and got paid for it and I never completed it. I did complete it, according to Scott Jensen. And he's the one that looked at every one of the projects that we did up there, us and Basil. And he's the one that we had to call him when we started the job, and we called him when we finished it. There was no mention of Mark Pickering or nobody until this all come about. And so then, when this all comes, like I said, is when it comes about, when the town sent it in and do it. I mean, I've talked to Mark, and I told him I'll go back and straighten up what we got to straighten. And we're going to plan on doing it. And I even called Peter Monday morning while I was in Maine and told him I couldn't make it to the meeting, and we were going to straighten this thing up. Because somebody brought it up, something about a guardrail. And that's the first I'd heard of it so I called Mark up and discussed it the following week. And told him that we'd go up and straighten out a couple of the guardrails. And other than that, he has no problem. So tomorrow morning I was supposed to meet with him up here again, just to go over everything.
Can I say something?
I'd like to finish with the board, if I may. And I'd like to interject that well, I'll leave that alone and I'll wait till after. Anything else, Chris? Anything
No,
else?
as I said, I don't have a problem with his work. He did a good job, except it wasn't finished. And as Mike said, the water man said that the part was done. That does not have anything to do with the highway department, the highway part of it. That
But
just
none of-
has to do with the brook.
Right, and what I'm saying is, not one of us knew that at the time.
You're
The only guy-
you're the road commissioner. You should know about that. You
Well,
should
none
be
of
in
us
charge
did, I
of
don't
it.
think. We didn't, at that time, nobody knew Mark Pickering was supposed to be inspecting them, as from the state. The only one that was told to call was Scott Jensen, from the water
Right.
management thing, which we all did. We called him the day we started, he'd come up and check it all out. We had a little meeting there with him. And then when we finished it, he'd come back down and look at it and make sure it's all done according to plans. And he went on his way and we submitted our bills. So I mean, the whole thing is, everybody says that I walked away and got paid and didn't do the damn job. It was bullshit. Because I did it according to that inspector. So now this other thing's all come about. And we finally got it hashed out. So Mark, I told Mark today that I would go in and straighten it all up.
And this is the section that needs to be repaved?
Pieces of right.
Right.
Small,
That small
small-
section.
May I interrupt a moment, Mike? You are in mixed company and you're going to be on TV, so please watch your language.
Well, that's about the way I...
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, when I get right to the point, Pete, so whatever
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you'll hear it. So. I mean, yeah, I mean, so there was a whole thing, a bunch of things. Just like, you know, Mark told me, you know, like with your bidding, because he said Archie called him here a week or so ago, was carrying on about the whole process and all this stuff. And Mark said too, he said he had a real problem, you know, like with you going over the bids with us, because you've worked for Clark's before. And it's like a conflict that you still, you know, where you have worked with them and you still visit with them and all this stuff. He said, you should have to sit out on the bids too. I mean, just like I do. And I go, when it's for me to put a bid in, I sit in the crowd. You know, and that's what he told me.
Well, I'm guilty, okay, Mike?
I guess we're all guilty, you know.
I
what I'm
didn't know
saying?
the whole thing myself. I learned more tonight than I've heard right along.
Well, I do recall that after the purchase policy was made, that there was a change made because of something that a bid was paid out before it was finished. And we amended our purchase policy. So I'm a stickler for, you have a checklist to make sure everything is covered and taken care of before you sign off on a project. It should be a list of things that need to be done and presented to the board that everything's in order. That's my suggestion. Instead of bad-mouthing people in our community, let's put it before the board here, have a discussion, instead of here, because I've heard for months, Mike hasn't done the work for what he was paid for. So this is why we're here today.
And one more thing. I do not work for AX Clark and Sons at this time. And I haven't. And I've been accused of working for them still. And I have not. I'm not still working for them.
No, but the way the whole conflict thing reads, I mean, your damn grandmother could have something to do with it, and we'd have to set aside because of it, you know, the way the conflict reads of our policy.
It's a direct or indirect personal or financial interest of a public officer. So even if you are not working with them currently, you have worked with them in the past.
It's not a direct.
It's an indirect.
It's not a direct.
Well, it says direct or indirect
Well,
personal
In
financial
a
interest.
small area, a lot of people that do the type of work have worked for different contractors
Right.
that bid. I
Okay,
think Mike will have to agree with me on that one.
I do.
I'd like to move on. Angela,
Alright.
has something or anything you'd like to add at this point?
Not at this point.
Not at this point. Okay, I will have a couple of thoughts, and I probably will have some more, but I'll bring them in later on. I call it members of the public who might like to speak. Yes, please.
Yes. When Mike said before that Chris and I, we signed off on the work, and that is true. We were not aware of the fact that according to other people who went to check on the work, that it hadn't been completed. And so we did talk about that, and as Shelley said, I afterwards asked that we add something to the purchasing policy, which was that people should only get paid when the work is done, and that we as a select board then have the responsibility to make sure that, to go over the contracts and make sure that the work is done before we pay. So we were ignorant at the time. None of us knew that in fact there was still some work to be done. So we did sign off for Mike, and he wasn't doing anything wrong in accepting the money because the select board signed it. And it was just only after that things were missing. And so we did amend and add to the purchasing policy that from now on.
Well, it should have been there in the first place anyways.
Of course.
Yeah.
Do you remember when that was done?
What the
The amendment you suggested
it was,
just now?
well, I was still the chair. It was several months ago. I can look it up, or maybe Winetta has it in the.
This is dated April 1st, 2019, the purchasing policy for the town of Newfane.
Thank you.
I was wondering whether it was after April 1st, that's.
But again, remember, I mean, Mike was under the understanding that he had completed the work.
No, I said that.
Well, I
Yeah,
think we all were at that time then.
Yeah, no,
And-
Mike, I said Mike
Yeah.
didn't do anything wrong.
right.
We all were under the impression we had been told the work was completed. It was after that it turned out that people were saying, well, some of the work wasn't completed.
So I guess it's the board's responsibility to figure out what work was not completed and why it wasn't signed off properly. And that needs to be so, there needs to be a checklist of things done, done,
No,
done,
we said
done.
that we
Yeah.
were going to have, it would be the board's responsibility to go over the contract and ensure that everything is done.
Yeah.
I have something about the conflict of interest. And the conflict of interest, the way I read it, it says a direct or indirect personal or financial interest of a public officer, his or her spouse, household member, child, stepchild, parent, grandparent, grandchild, anybody in your family, business associate or employer or employee in the outcome of a cause, preceding application or any other matter pending before the officer or before the public body in which he or she holds office or is employed. I guess I'm just misunderstanding, if he doesn't work for A.S. Clark anymore, he's not employed or an employee of them. So at this point,
Well, a business associate.
he's
When
not
was the last-
employed
when
by
was the
them any
last time
longer.
You were employed by them.
Not at the time he made the motion, he was not employed by them, so that's not a conflict.
Well,
According to number one,
No, but I think
A1.
when we bid on the jobs, I think you still drove once in a while for them. I mean, I've seen, you know,
I drove 4 days last year.
When was your last day at A.S. Clark?
Oh, hell,
Okay, so, but you're not currently employed at the
No.
time you made the motion.
no,
So I don't see why that would be a
no, I
conflict.
drove 4 days a year ago.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak up at this point? I'm not trying to cut off. I certainly will come back to anyone that wishes. One of the things with this particular situation is that the calendar, the details, who said what, to whom, when, and so forth, seems to be a little bit murky. At the same time, we are talking about two different projects. The initial project, which is repair of the section on Dover Road, has kind of bounced along. Unless I'm wrong, it seems to me that it got done, it didn't get done. Mike said that he was going to take care of it, and it sits undone. Sometime after, there was agreement that it would be taken care of. I don't know exactly. I am personally at a disadvantage because, of course, I wasn't here for a lot of those things. I have to admit that I didn't watch every televised meeting, nor did I read every set of minutes, and so I'm way behind the eight ball, no question about that. As to the question of whether the item needed to be on a separate agenda for a regular meeting, the question of the bid did come up at a regular meeting. The vote then and there was to have the bids held in abeyance while they were reviewed. Once that is done, my understanding is that the matter is on the agenda for any subsequent meeting. That's my understanding. I just wanted to put that out. I don't think that bringing it up at our regular meeting a week ago was a constructive error. We have work that needs to be done on Hunter Brook. The board has acted on that, named a contractor, and we have to go forward on that.
That's your interpretation, excuse me, but that's your interpretation.
My interpretation of
that the bid was approved properly and that we must go forward with it. I still have a question as to whether or not it's legally binding. First of all, when you got the bid at the meeting last time, who reviewed it? Who reviewed all those bids that came in to see if they were properly
I personally
vetted?
do not know.
I looked at all of them.
Well, you did, but did the board get
Well,
a
then
chance to look
I
at it?
can't answer for the board.
Which
We
bids
had
are you
them.
asking about? The Hunterbrook bids?
Yes.
Hunterbrook?
Or you all reviewed them? Right?
We opened them that night.
We opened
Yeah.
them.
We opened them and they was gonna be looked at by,
They had to be reviewed by the
Right.
state.
which,
I
and the
made copy.
state, the
I
state
made-
says, Mark, and I think he told Peter, the way he looked at it, the Fitzpatrick excavating was the bid to take. Because it's a low bid, and then there's no problem with the work that they've done. And like I said, I mean, just because of this whole thing on that other road, there was nothing ever mentioned that you couldn't bid. He said if you're gonna not accept their bid, you should not have let them bid on it and open their bid. And the whole thing is another thing, and what gets me though, is if you're 10 grand over budget, which when I asked you about that, you didn't have a clue about the budget, you know, you said, oh God, I guess I better look at the budgets. And I said, I don't blame you, Pete, I mean, you just come on board, you know, I mean, can't imagine anybody goes with it. I'm sure Angela hadn't read the budget, you know, the whole thing. And I said that, you know, we budgeted it last year when we were putting our budget together, $15,000 to do that road. And it come in at 25,000. So how in the hell can you award something that's 10 grand over budget?
And back to what I'm saying is, I want to see those bids. And you open them up, and because I'm a woman, maybe you're not, people here don't think I have the ability to review a bid, or I don't know what the reason is, but I never get a chance to see the bids. They're opened up, and a decision is brought forward, and then we vote on it. Now, those bids have been sitting out for a month and a half. We should have gotten some sort of analysis of those bids, a report to the board, and have the option to come in and look at them before you just, oh, we're gonna do it because it's on Jay's report.
Shelley, when we had bids, when I was on the board, if you remember, those bids were passed around at the table when they were opened, and everybody had a chance, and you were one of the ones who understood a lot of it, like with the trucks and the excavator, but all the board members did have a chance to look at the bids.
Yeah, but it's a complicated bid,
Well,
you know, just like the excavator. It
Well,
has,
the night we opened the bid, it was tabled.
we didn't
The
get
only
to see
thing,
them.
the only, no, yeah, but they were read out loud. I mean, they
The
were mine.
final, just the number, just the number.
There was a quorum here,
Right.
right? There was a quorum here.
Right.
So I don't remember that if somebody's absent, we stop.
That's not the point, Marion. The point is that
It never come back with
it
any, you
never came back with an analysis.
know, just like I said,
Jay was supposed to give us a report. That was my understanding.
I don't want to get into semantics here, which we are. The word analysis was just used. I'm not sure that was used before. I'm not sure that we were looking for an analysis.
Or a review, like a statement, you know, like,
As I remember, the night that the bids were open, they were passed around. I may be wrong. Please correct me if I am. Any board member had opportunity to come in here and ask for the bids to take a look at them between then and now. So I feel that that the opportunity was there, and
well, I still don't believe
No,
that
I don't
it's.
believe that, Pete.
No.
what's that?
that was, the night that was open, it was tabled. The bids are gonna be looked at, they're gonna be handed into the state for review, and then they're gonna come back with suggestions to the town. And I never heard anything come back to the town, no suggestions whatsoever. The first thing all about the only thing about that thing the other night was, all of a sudden it comes up and Christopher, just goes out and says we're gonna hire Clark.
Makes a
I
motion.
suggest Clark, you guys voted for Clark, and that was it. There was nothing brought up, why, why didn't you say, well, why are you rejecting the low bid? Nobody brought that up. There was no questions or no conversation about the other bid. Mark Pickering said, and he told, because Archie Clark called him up too, what the hell's going on with this thing? So Mark told him, the way I look at it, Fitzpatrick's are the ones that should be doing the job. They're low bidders and all this stuff. And he says, there's no question about it. But how in the hell can you award a bid for 25 grand when you only got 15 in the thing? If anything, if you didn't want them guys doing it, you should have thrown the damn bid out and said, let's rebid it. Maybe that's what it ought to be now. Throw it out. You don't have money enough to pay them to do it anyways. Start over.
I don't know how that works.
Point of order, Shelley, June 3rd, you opened the bids.
Okay, I opened the bids.
Okay.
You opened the bids and they were read aloud to the TV. It was part of the road foreman's report afterwards, and it was, a motion was made to have them reviewed by the state.
All right. See, that's what we're saying. I know they were open. It doesn't matter who opened them. They were open. They were read out loud. And it was tabled to have the state review it. And we haven't heard one word except
But
the
you're
other
saying-
day, like I said, Mark calls me up after all this happened. And he told me, he says, I'm with you on this one. He says, it should be going to you.
Do you have anything, it was just a phone conversation, or is there
Right.
anything in writing from Mark saying
sir.
about it?
No, I don't have nothing from Mark.
Okay.
But he called Pete too, he said.
Yeah, he and I had a conversation and,
But what I'm saying is, yes, the bids are read out loud. Everybody looked at the bid. It was all read out loud, but nobody's looked at it since.
Right.
Nobody's had anything back, from just like the other night when, he had it on his road report. They should have said, well, what's the state said about
Said
it
it,
then?
exactly, that would be the
I mean,
next
what is
step.
it- what's the comment? The state is supposed to review it. What have they said? What do they recommend? That was never asked. None of that was done.
This is
It
the
was
most,
it was just hired, and that just made no sense whatsoever. I don't give a goddamn if I do the job or not. But I said, you sure as hell ain't gonna hire somebody for $15,000 or $10,000 over our budget, and we gotta figure or somebody's gonna come up with the money, and it ain't worth $25,000 a project. Let the town do it. They just did Sunset Lake Road. Let them go do that project. I think you gotta either rebid it or something. The way you done it, it ain't right. And that's another thing the state guy said. He said you could look at lawsuits.
I
A lot
think,
of different people.
I make a motion that we have the lawyer, our town lawyer, look at the process here.
I think you have to just rebid the damn thing. And be the quickest and easiest.
Probably would be the smartest.
And have the Mark Pickering come in and tell us what he has to say.
We didn't really need Mark Pickering to look at it all. It's a town project.
I know, but you
But
said
then
that he
they-
called and he's
No, what it
going
was, see
for
what I'm saying?
Fitzpatrick, so.
What happened was, right from day one, they had Mark come up and draw up a little plans and all this, so they've had the state involved since they started it. But you really didn't need to, but they wanted them to come in and draw this all up. So they have all this done, then they send it down for him to review. And, but nobody got back to review. Until all of a sudden, all this thing goes through, and that's what I said he called me, and he said he called Pete. I think he said he called you too, didn't he, Lynetta?
I called him for
And they said,
clarification. And I also.
I think the best damn thing, oh yeah, I'd look at it, I'd throw the damn thing out and rebid it. Whoever gets it, gets it.
may I,
You don't want somebody bidding on it, you tell them up front, because like he says, if you don't tell somebody they ain't capable of bidding, you don't let them bid on it and open their bid, and then tell them you can't do the job. You've got to have that up front too, he said.
I'd like to step in here. We have a motion on the table It has not been seconded. Is there a second
To do,
to have our attorney review the situation?
The process, the bid process.
Well,
I spoke with Bob Fisher the other day, and he said that we had to follow the policies that the town has set forth.
yeah.
He said by reviewing the policies, that's what we had to do.
I'm still looking for a second for the motion. If I do not hear one, the motion is not accepted.
To do what now?
To discuss it with our attorney, with the town attorney, whether or not the bid process was handled correctly.
Just for this particular bid.
Yes.
I don't want to keep relying on being the new kid at the table. However, I was under the impression that once we voted to take the bids under advisement, that someone, and I don't want to point fingers to say who I think it might have, should have, could have been, would have taken them to be looked at by the appropriate person or persons. I thought that was done. I'm sorry. However, our purchasing policy does state that once a bid is awarded, that the board and perhaps even the chair, I don't remember the details, is in a position to negotiate with the individual that got the award. I just want to put that out on the table so that people could be thinking about
But it
that.
also said, like in the purchasing policy, it says too, you take the low bidder unless they don't have all the specs and all the stuff on it. Low bidder, when you take low bid, you take low bid.
That is
In the
one.
case says, unless they don't have everything included in their bids.
Yeah, that is one of the criteria for
Yeah.
accepting a bid, yeah.
So anyways, I make a motion, we rebid the damn thing.
My motion's on the table still about, I think under this circumstance that we need to have our attorney look at the process and see if it's even legally been approved.
I'm sorry, you did not get a second to your motion.
Oh, no. So is it off the table then?
I would say so, yes. If a motion does not get a second,
Within what time frame? By the end of the meeting?
no, it'd have to be
maybe we should.
a new motion and
Let's see.
start again.
Pete,
Yes,
I make a motion to rebid it.
to rebid it?
There's too many mistakes made. The way we did it.
I will second Chris's motion.
We have a motion and a second to rebid the job. Is there
Could we have a clarification, the Hunter Brook job?
Hunter Brook job?
Yes.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
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 Any abstentions? I did not hear any. I think I will abstain from voting on this particular motion, having heard the votes as they came. That done, I would like to ask the board for guidance suggestions, whatever, as to how we go forward with this. The first thing we've got to do is to inform A.S. Clark of our action. I will do that probably this evening.
Do you have to have a motion to do that, or you just automatically do that?
Well, somebody has to do it, and I think it probably fall to the chair.
No, but do you need a motion for that to happen?
If you wish to move that I be authorized to call the bidder, I certainly entertain that and ask for a second.
Okay. Make a motion that Pete calls A.S. Clark to inform them that the bid has been not accepted. Is that what we're calling it?
Mhm.
It's going to be rebid
Second.
for Hunter Brook.
Any discussion on that motion?
I would also add to the reason why it's being rebid, because it's overbid, it's over budget.
There was no reason given in the original motion, so it wouldn't be included.
But I think they ought to know why, just.
Well, there may be other reasons. I mean, I'm sure they're aware of the situation as far as the finance side of it, so if not, I certainly would be willing to put that point forward in discussions with them.
Pete,
Sorry, go.
may I suggest something? Mike, you said that we have a budget of only $15,000 to do this work. Then, though I think that's a very important issue, that you have to tell anybody who puts in a bid that there's X amount of money to do this job. So that you don't get all these various bids that are way above the 15,000.
Should be,
It's really not fair to anybody.
should be part of
That's
that
right.
scope.
Right.
It should be part of,
Yeah.
The scope of the project.
yes.
I make a motion also that we need a,
We have
Do we
the
gotta
motion
vote on that one
on the
first?
table relative to authorizing me to contact A.S. Clark.
I already seconded the original motion. So we just have to vote. If there's no more
Any further
conversation.
discussion on that motion?
no,
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
So I think we need to make a addition to our bid policy that we have met all the criteria for the bid selection, and that's presented to the board in that order, so that we review it based on our criteria for the bid selection.
Does that include the budget amount that the project comes in at, that we make?
Yeah, price, criteria for bid selection. This is in evaluating the bid, that at the time of the evaluation of the bid, that they must meet this criteria. And it's a checklist.
And that the bid is, and that the budget for this project is at X amount of dollars?
Exactly.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Is there a work session after the bidding process and the bids are open? Is there a work session that's, the board sits down and reviews the bids and thoughts on it? And second question is, how does the public get copies of the bids? Whether it's for purchase of equipment, road work, whatever, so that we can look at it ourselves, because a lot of us are as educated as you folks are on road work and other projects, and we want to look at it and maybe have a discussion at one of the meetings with you folks.
Wouldn't it be available once the bids are open?
Once the
Well,
bids are open, they
At
are,
the town clerk's or the
Estimated bid,
administrative
I asked
assistant?
for a copy of the bids all the bids. And they went, I don't know, they were opened, I was here, I asked for copies of them, I never got copies of them. I came back in, same thing with one of the road bids. It's important that the public, for transparency, gets a chance to see what all these bids are.
It's also-
And then they can ask the question, why is the bid being awarded to the high bidder? When we have procedures that say the low bidder gets the bid if he does not have any hindrance for performing. History of whatever.
Let me say something that I think is important, and that is that a budget is a budget. It's an estimate of what it will cost, or could cost, should cost, whatever you want to say. And very often, not very often, but often, a bid or a project will come in over budget. And so I don't think we should get hung up on budget. I understand that there's something that is important, that we stay as close as possible to that. If the jobs sometimes go over,
That,
and you have to find the money to pay for them.
no, that's not true.
As a general contractor for 50 years, if I put a bid in for a job and I don't perform, I come back and tell the customer, oh, it's gonna cost another 10 grand. He's gonna tell me no, or he's gonna tell me that he's gonna see me in court for not performing to the original bid that I put in. And that's, I don't see why the board and the town shouldn't be held to the same standard. Balance your books. If the time to have the discussion is before the horse gets out of the barn, and that would be in a work session when all the bids come in, and you look at him and say, how is he doing this when material costs are that cost? So yes, I understand we give you the authority to assign bids and payment for those bids, but at the same time, you guys are the ones who are responsible for maintaining the budget. And it's not an open-ended checkbook. I mean, in any business that I've ever been in, you got a budget, you got to stick to that budget. And $10,000 or $40,000 or whatever overages, when you turn around to the town people and say, hey, we went over budget 50 grand, we got to increase taxes. Well, there's going to be a lot of unhappy people about that. And I don't think my question is unreasonable. It's transparency.
A problem with a budget, if you will, must be taken care of in the current year. It doesn't get paid for in taxes the following year. That's it.
The only way you can pay over is if the scope changes and it has to come before the board again.
It's not,
It is true.
disagree, that's all right. Yes.
On a lot of cases with a lot of things, there's a clause in a contract. You bid it, but there's a clause in it. If you hit ledge, it's gonna cost X number of dollars more, whatever it costs to take care of the ledge. Am I right or wrong?
Right.
You can make those things in the contracts.
Well, I almost thought we put that in like this one, didn't we? Because they said there might have been ledge, because somebody asked about hammering and blasting. But I don't know if they did or not. Maybe they just decided they'd go over the top of it. But I know it was asked at the meeting. Oh, yeah,
I think
no,
it was,
there's-
I think it was said go over top of it.
Right. Oh, it's, you know, just like up on,
Put those things in the contract.
right, just like up on Sunset Lake Road, they hit that ledge in the thing. And it took an extra 3 days to hammer it or something, right? You know, from what we was
Yeah.
thought, so.
As far as I know, they're still within budget though.
Right.
So,
Okay, I guess my understanding of where we stand now is that it has been voted to rebid the Hunter Brook project, and that I am authorized to get in touch with A.S. Clark and to tell them what has transpired here this evening. And
We have a motion on the table that's been seconded that needs to be voted on as to the addition to the bid, but, and to add the budget to the bid process for when we send it out to contractors.
I also think, did I make a motion yet about making that criteria checklist as part of the package deal?
That's what you just talking about, isn't it?
That was, as far as setting out a bid,
Yeah, that we
No.
review it and based on the criteria that is in our bid process.
well, this
I
is
think
two
we're
separate.
talking about two
Okay.
very different things. And
Yeah.
I don't think we want to get into that. I thank you for reminding me on the motion. The motion is to include the anticipated budget for the project with any invitation to bid. Is that a proper interpretation of the motion?
Add it to the bid specifications that we have on our purchasing policy. So when we send out a bid, it's one of those criteria that we have.
Well,
That's where we would add it.
yeah. We could add, again, I think we're thinking about two different things. Adding some wording in our purchasing policy that says that an anticipated budget will be included in any invitation for bids.
Yes.
The other is to see to it that it happens.
If I remember, the day of the bid up there, when the site plan, the site review, they asked how much we had budgeted for that, different ones. And I think Jay told them what we had for a budget on that. I mean, you can still put it in your bid,
Well,
and
there's
stuff like that, you know.
a town bid versus a state bid, whose criteria is.
Right.
Oh,
Well, this is
it's always
town.
a town bid,
This is town.
even though we're
This is
getting
town, you know,
funding.
like most of the guys, when you go look at them jobs, somebody always asks, you know, what
Yeah.
kind of a budget do you have for something like this?
Okay, well, maybe my semantics are wrong, but if you're getting funding from the state, you have to meet their criteria.
So
Mm.
it should be added to both.
Okay.
So where are we at here?
We have to vote on the motion to add the budget to the bid that goes out, or
The
the
invitation,
invitation to bid
To
to go
bid.
out. Shelley made the motion, I seconded it. We've had discussion, now we need to vote.
is there further discussion?
I do.
Yeah,
If there's a change in orders, there's a policy here about that. So once a bid has been accepted, if changes to the specifications become necessary, the select board would prepare a change order specifying the scope of the change.
that's entirely separate from what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right, but I
That
just
is
wanted,
after the bid is been awarded.
Yeah, because
Right.
we've already made a motion to rebid, so it doesn't,
I just wanted to bring it to your attention, that's all.
Okay, we have a motion to include anticipated budget in the invitation to bid when we do go out to bid. If I hear no further discussion on it, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? I will abstain on that. I don't believe that, well, I have no reason to abstain, but I will not vote, let's put it that way. Okay, any other comments, any other business that you wish to bring up?
Well, I mean, we talked about conflict of interest. So I wonder if everyone's happy with what we have, you know, on our policy for conflict of interest. And that we
I
are
would leave-
aware, you
I'm
know.
sorry.
I would leave
We can't
discussion,
discuss only what was on the agenda.
I would ask that discussion of that area be put on an agenda for a regular meeting. Rather than,
I make a motion to put that on the next meeting agenda.
I'll second it.
any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Anything else that is germane to this evening's discussion? Thank you all. We do not need a motion to adjourn, we stand adjourned.